Welcome to VHS Voyage, where we're on a journey to find, watch, and discuss movies on VHS we've never seen or never knew existed. I'm Matt.
I'm Devin.
Today's episode, we're going to talk about
surviving the game.
Before we start talking about the movie and getting into the story and stuff, Devin, hit us with some facts and information.
Yup. This is directed by Ernest R. Dickerson.
I've heard that name before, dude.
It stars Ice-T,
Yep.
Rutger Hauer, Charles Dutton, F. Murray Abraham, John McGinley.
That was a surprise to me. I was not
Yeah, the dude from, because I love that dude.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite characters in Scrubs.
Yeah,
I
Scrubs.
love him in Scrubs.
He's hilarious.
And an absolute psychopath, Gary Busey.
Yeah.
So a lot of people call this a ripoff because it came out a year after a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie called Hard Target. But I guess the premise of Hard Target is people are hunting homeless people for sport.
Which one came out first?
Hard Target.
Hard Target.
A lot of people consider this like a ripoff. I think it's a little bit different though. I wouldn't call it a ripoff. It might just have similar ideas of like homeless people being hunted. Gary Busey wrote that entire monologue himself.
Did he really?
So basically, his character didn't really have backstory.
Right.
So he like came to set one day and was like, hey, I got this thing I want to do. And he just did it. And he wrote that entire monologue. He wrote that entire backstory. He performed that entire scene. The director was like, I'm keeping that in. And this man is a psycho, bro. This man is insane, dude. I was laughing my ass off listening to this thing. I was like, what the f*** am I listening to?
And I have to say, dude, that was one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
It's the best scene in the movie. Are we spoiling this movie?
We're going to get into some stuff. We're not going to spoil the whole movie, but we're going to get into some stuff for sure.
Well, I'm just going to say this. I think Gary Busey should have been in the movie.
That's one of the things I was going to say. He should definitely, because he's the first one that dies.
Yeah. You can tell he's passionate about acting.
Oh, yeah.
Not saying he has the best roles all the time, but you can tell he's actually passionate about it and cares. He wrote a 5-minute monologue about getting attacked by a dog.
Dude, he plays a great crazy guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a great crazy guy in a Black Sheep.
Well, it's because he's actually crazy.
I know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to start by saying this. I'm just going to get this right out of the way. I like this movie.
Yeah. It's got high highs and it's got some low lows.
There's some problems. Towards the end of the movie, it started to fall apart.
But the highs are not bad. It's like, oh, that's fun.
Essentially, kind of what Devin was saying earlier. So Ice-T is a homeless man named Mason. He has an old man, and his old man friend was fucking hilarious. That dude. Yeah. That dude was he was just kind of I don't give a.
Didn't want to be with Ice-T. He was like, I don't want to be here, bro. You got to be breaking into places and stuff.
But then, unfortunately, the next morning, the old man
he's just dead.
Yeah. So, obviously, he was old and not healthy, right? Probably not eating good. But I think it's insinuated that he passed away from like maybe because the security guy hit him really hard in the gut.
Oh, okay.
And that might have triggered something that made him pass away. Ice-T's character was deeply affected by this because I guess this was like the last person in his life that he was close to.
He cares for like 5 seconds. Yeah. And then he doesn't give a shit.
So he's going to step out in front of a truck to commit suicide. And this guy that runs like a homeless shelter feeding homeless people saves him at the last second. And he's like, hey man, don't kill yourself. You got plenty to live for. You're young. I might have a job for you involving wilderness survival and guiding a bunch of guys in the woods. He goes to talk to Barnes. That was Barnes, right? So Ice-T goes to talk to Barnes to get details about the job. Barnes explains the job. He's like, I need somebody with good endurance. Ice-T does. He gets $20. He goes and gets him a nice hotel room, dude. Gets him a bottle of champagne, because back then a $20 bill could go a long way. Gets him a bottle of champagne, man. Gets him a razor blade so he can cut his hair.
I found this scene odd.
It was a weird scene.
He gets in a bathtub and it plays this weird music. Yeah. I'm just going to say something. If you're a grown man and you take baths, you're fucking weird.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you take a bath, you're just sitting in your own filth.
Yeah, I just think it's weird. I think the act of a man getting down like that and sitting there and just being wet is odd for a man.
Yeah, I agree. So Barnes comes in there. He's like, this is the job. You're going to come to the wilderness with us. You're going to guide us. They make their way to the place, which is literally in the middle of nowhere. They have to drive hours to get there. Then they have to fly to the place. It's in the middle of nowhere. And that's an important detail because later on towards the end of the movie, there's a thing. You know what I'm talking about. So he's at this cabin with all these different characters, and they're all different, right? Gary Busey's a therapist. He's like a psychotic therapist.
Well, he works for the CIA.
Supposedly works for the CIA. And one thing that I thought was interesting is like during this whole cabin sequence, most of them were treating Mason's character with respect, you know, like treating him with respect. And I'm assuming it's probably because they didn't want to hint.
Well, they're playing mind games with
him, right? And that's also when the Gary Busey monologue happens, which is just amazing,
bro. If you don't want to watch this movie, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just go on YouTube and type in like Gary Busey surviving the game monologue and just watch this monologue.
It was great.
Whomp, went down in the mud, rolled over. That dog is fighting and biting and scratching and kicking, and I'm screaming and crying. I'm grabbing him around the head. I stand up, fall with my weight on it. Here's neck break.
Wakes up the next morning, and he wakes up to a gun to his head, and Rutger Hauer's character's like, you get a head start while we're eating breakfast. We're gonna eat a slow breakfast. That's your head start. If you can make it to civilization, you get to live. Otherwise, you're dead.
This is when the movie really hooked me because I knew nothing going into this. I didn't read anything about a premise. I saw this cover and I was like, oh, it's just gonna be an action movie.
If you make it to civilization, you live. If you don't, maybe God will have mercy.
Obviously, so the first thing he does, which was kind of smart because they wouldn't have ever expected this, was he decides to book it back to the cabin whenever they're on their way to find him. He's like, I'm going to go back to this cabin and try to see if I can find a weapon. And that was smart because in their mind, they never in a million years would have thought that the person would try to come back to the cabin.
Right.
But Rutger Hauer's character figures it out. So they go back to the cabin to get him. When he goes into the cabin, he opens the door. He opens a door to a room that has a bunch of human heads preserved in jars. And that was their trophies.
Yeah.
That was kind of psychotic. So that, unfortunately, when he gets back to the cabin, he sees the heads, he pours gasoline all in the cabin so he can set it on fire. And unfortunately, that's when Gary Busey's character dies.
Man, he should have. That's really the only death I think we should spoil or I mean, obviously people are gonna die in this movie, but I don't want to spoil how or when. Right. But bro, they killed Gary Busey like 20-30 minutes in.
He should have been one of the last ones.
So you never see him die. The house blows up. I'm thinking he's gonna appear at the very end.
Dude, like a freaking Friday the 13th, Jason popping out of the water.
No. I meant more like he escaped before the house blew up. It just never showed it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he's gonna attack Mason again at the end at some point. Damn, you were talking some supernatural shit.
Yeah, dude. Like he pops out of the water with a dead dog carcass slung over his shoulder, and it's like the dog from whenever he was a kid. And never mind.
Try well done, bitch.
He gets a shotgun eventually in the woods. He outsmarts one of the guys and gets a shotgun, but he shoots it like it's a damn rifle.
Yeah.
It's almost like he doesn't quite understand that a shotgun is a close quarters, firearm and not good at range at all.
But then he shoots a tree with the shotgun and the tree falls down.
That was one of the kind of dumbest scenes. Yeah, there's like a gap across a canyon and he starts unloading into a tree trunk until it falls down perfectly across the canyon to create a bridge. That was kind of stupid.
There's some things in, like I said, the highs are really high.
Yeah.
It's intense.
Yeah.
A lot of the movie's fun. Also, there's some funny moments in here too. There's a scene where he puts a guy on his shoulders.
Yeah.
And the guy's like making noise and he goes, "Shut up, bitch!" And he just starts slamming his head into a tree, dude.
Come in. Ref, and do your copy.
Shut the fuck up, mother.
Eventually, you learn about Ice-T character's Mason's backstory and why he's homeless. Basically, he was like a mechanic in a poor neighborhood, and the building that him and his wife and his daughter lived in was should have been condemned. It was just a really shitty building. basically a fire hazard, and he was supposed to fix stuff in the building to try to prevent a fire from happening, but he never got around to it, and eventually the building caught on fire. His wife and daughter gets killed.
Yeah, this is kind of another problem I have. This is your basic trope of like grizzled man whose wife and kids are dead, so now he's angry at the world, but somehow he's a badass that can murder a bunch of people, but he's actually just a mechanic that's homeless.
Yeah.
That's kind of it's just like your basic trope that's in these kind of movies.
Towards the end of the movie, a few things kind of fall apart for me, and I don't want to spoil certain things, but like the tree scene was towards the end of the movie. That was kind of dumb.
He becomes like a badass who can like hunt at night. He's like one with nature now, and he can like move in the darkness, and he paints his face, and somehow he just becomes this badass, even though he's a mechanic.
Right. I don't think it would be spoiler for me to say, because when you watch a movie like this, it's obvious the main bad guy is going to be the last one standing.
Correct.
Right. So Rutger Hauer's character is the main bad guy. He's the last one. This is where part of the movie kind of falls apart for me, because Rutger Hauer gets away.
Yep.
And he has two planes. One of them, he makes Ice-T's character think he's in the plane and about to get away, but instead he's in another plane, and he has the other plane like rigged to blow up somehow, and he thinks it blows up Ice-T's character and kills him, and then he gets away and goes back to the city. You see that Mason's still alive, but he's still in the middle of nowhere, dude. He has no vehicles, he has no equipment, no rations, nothing. He's in the middle of nowhere, and it says 3 days later, somehow he makes it back to the city.
He made it all the way back to Seattle, Washington.
With the face paint still on, finds Rutger Hauer's character, and finishes things off.
And the way it ends is stupid.
The way he killed him.
Honestly, the last 10-15 minutes of this movie really took me out of it.
Yeah. Most of the movie was within the realm of possibility until the end, and then it kind of got a little goofy. All right, so for me, those are kind of some of my negatives. The score was weird at times, the ending kind of fell apart, and Gary Busey should have lived longer.
Yeah, I got some other things. There's some really corny dialogue and acting and delivery. The backstory stuff, it's the same backstory of every guy. He's like grizzled, his family's dead. He's a badass. Characters die and nobody cares, even though apparently these people are all really close. Like there's like some characters that are really close to each other and they die, and after 10 seconds they don't give a shit. Apparently these guys are like these like trained hunters who have done this over and over. They miss every shot.
Oh, yeah.
They miss every gunshot.
Yeah. I think despite the lows, I thought this was a fun movie.
It is fun.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Honestly, I just want to watch the Gary Busey scene again.
That's
all I want to watch again.
That was a great.
Do I only like the Gary Busey? Am I just like this?
Dude.
I think it's one of the greatest pieces of. I think it's one of the greatest scenes ever put in a movie.
For me, this is a keeper. I want to keep this one in the collection. I could see myself watching this again.
Yeah, I wouldn't watch it again, but I would watch the Gary Busey scene again. Yeah. It's definitely a one-time watch because I know everything that's going to happen next time I watch it.
Yeah, that would take some of the fun out.
It takes some of like the suspense out. That damn bastard Gary Busey though, son.
So
that motherfucker's crazy. I don't know why I'm doing this voice and talking like this, but I'm going to keep on doing it because I like it. Yeah.
And we need to add more Gary Busey movies to the schedule.
Gary Busey.
We need more Gary Busey on VHS Voyage.
2 Hoagies, Utah.
That's it for tonight's episode on Surviving the Game. I'm Matt.
I'm Devin.
We'll catch you guys next week.